Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Grid Shift podcast. I'm your host, Alex Durante. Today, we have a very special guest. First of all, I want to talk about the name of the podcast for all the new listeners. So, a grid is any system that a business runs on, and a shift is what happens when the person running it decides to rewire it. And that's exactly what we talk about on the show. We connect with forward thinking leaders across all different industries, and we tap into how they actually think about business, growth, and we get into what they're building and their journey. So if you're new to the show, welcome. Again, I'm your host, Alex Durante. Quick read from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Access AI. If you're an owner and you are the business, nothing runs when you step away. And your growth has to come from referrals and word of mouth instead of a system. That's where you can count on Access AI. We close that gap. We're built by operators and powered by AI. Most AI companies, as a lot of our listeners know, they've never actually run a business. That's what makes us different. We find what's quietly costing business time and money, and we help business owners implement systems so that they actually get back time so they can work on their business versus in their business. So today, my guest is Armando Cruz III. Armando and his wife, Christian, co-founded Cruz Country Fitness, a physical therapy in Miami back in 2005. So they've been in this game for a long time. Over 2 decades, they've been helping high performance people that are stuck with chronic pain. They help them get back to their full potential. A little bit different of an avenue, right? People try to go to doctors, chiropractors, things like that don't really work for a lot of people's chronic pain. And that's really what separates what Armando and his wife are doing. And so after 2 decades, the stories that Armando has when we connected on the pre-podcast, I was very impressed with the different things he's doing to help people. He's also the founder of the Legacy Code. He runs something called the Rich Man Experience, which is an immersive coaching retreat for high performance men. Armando, great to have you on, man. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Alex. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get into it, you mentioned in our prep call, you said, my job is to help people learn the language of pain and then to help them feed the brain and the body what it needs to actually heal. And so I've really been looking to unpack that. I think that statement is so powerful. So if you can, just introduce yourself and talk about your journey a little bit and how you got here and a little bit about your company before we really get started.
Sure. Well, like you mentioned, my wife and I have been running this business since 2005, and really the impetus for this was there are so many people in life that I'm sure you've had the conversations that they're like, man, I've been struggling with this pain. I've seen doctors, I've seen chiropractors, I've seen acupuncturists, I've gotten surgery, I've taken shots, and they're still in pain. And it that always bothered me when I see somebody in pain. Um, as an athlete, it bothered me when I would see people not being taken care of as as a husband and as a father. It bothers me because I know that when you are in pain, you can't show up as the best version of yourself. So what does that mean at work? All of a sudden, you can't put out your best foot forward at home with your spouse. You're going to be more irritated. You're going to have less patience. If you have kids, they're going to drive that patience right out of you, right? So life gets significantly harder when you have to do it in pain. And that was a problem that I didn't think was acceptable for people to have to go through. And so for the past 20 years, I've dedicated my life to solving the actual problem and not chase symptoms. And with that came the the genesis of our suffering for our Suffering to Unstoppable program that my wife and I created to really dive into getting at the core of the problem. Most of the solutions out there are symptom-based solutions, not core-based solutions. And we wanted to make that change.
Fantastic. And you guys are based out of Miami, Florida, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're based like my studio's here in Florida, in Miami, Florida. But I also work with people virtually all over the globe.
No,
So
no,
that's
we're
been
going to
fun.
get into that. There are some interesting things that you said that we're definitely going to get into, but I want to start with some of your origins because I've talked to a couple different athletes, but specifically for you, you were a Division I cross country and track guy, and that was at FIU. And by your own account, I remember you saying, you're like, I wasn't the standout on the team. I wasn't the top 1%. So one question that triggered for me was, a lot of guys that are at the top, they don't have to necessarily think from the position that you were in. And so my question is, being the guy that was chasing the front of the pack, right, instead of leading it, what did that really teach you about, being persistent and going after things differently? Like, going for the front of the pack, it teaches you things that make you stand out. What do you think those things are that you learned that maybe athletes that are at the front of the pack take for granted?
It's a great question and one that I can definitely speak to. Actually, I want to take it back to my father real quick because so growing up, I ran cross country and track in college, but what people often don't know is that I hated running. And in fact, my dad was my coach for basketball and different things. And his view was you may not be the most skilled, but there's no excuse for not being in shape. And so his idea of practice was making sure that condition wise we were ready to go. We can run with the best teams. And so I remember as a little kid thinking, oh, he's making everybody run because he wants to see me run. And I would just like break down. I'm like, you only making everybody run because you want to see me run. Anyways, fast forward, I grow to really love running. Um, I played basketball, baseball, soccer. Um, and then when I started running, I realized, oh, you know what? I I can grind a little bit more than most people. I can push harder than most people. And I kind of found that niche where I was athletic in all of those other sports and I was good enough to be there, but I was never the standout. But in high school, I was the best in my team. I was the best in the school. So that definitely fed into it. But one thing that I realized that my father was also, he did Ironmans, marathons, and he trained at a high level. And I remember asking him like, Dad, why do you keep training, later in life? And he's like, you know what? I think it's the fact that I never reached my goals as I was younger that has kept me there. And while I wasn't the best in in college, I feel that the fact that I still train today is for the same reason, is that I never quite reached my full potential that I thought that I was. And so I guess I'm still chasing it. And I tell my boys and my daughter and everything like that because they see me training. They're still there. Both of my boys specifically run, and they run at such a high level. Like I wasn't even running those times in college, what they're running now. It's ridiculous. But I tell them, I said, listen, the days of me beating you guys are over. I'm not gonna catch you. I said, that being said, I will be training every day. And if you slack off, know that I'm coming after you. So don't slack off, right? So, I guess you get the same way, honestly, like the same way that my father did for me. I do a lot of what I do because of not what he said, but what he did and what I observed. And
Right.
as kids, as a father, I think one of the most powerful things I ever heard is that um, things get caught, not taught. And I genuinely believe that a lot of the work ethic I caught from my father because I was in so much proximity. Now, let me tell you, my mom worked very hard, but the fact that my dad and I would train together so many hours, like there was a bond there that I saw. And then, fortunately and unfortunately, I used to go to work with him in the summers, which was in construction. And If you know anything about Miami summers with the heat over
Ooh.
90 plus, with the mosquitoes and the humidity, it
Yeah.
was not enjoyable. It was not enjoyable. But I saw how hard he worked, how he ran his business. And I was like, okay, well, I know I don't want to do this, but I do want to have the flexibility to go to my kids' practices and games, which is what I got to see. Like he was at all my practices, all my games. He was training. So I wanted that level of flexibility. And that's kind of what set the roots for a lot of what I did. My father's construction company wasn't a huge company, but it was a high quality company. And what I mean by that was he charged more than mostly everybody else. And at first, some people were like, oh, man, this is too expensive. But as he would say, it's like, it may seem like that, but it's going to be more expensive when you have to do it over because you didn't do it right. And sure enough, some people would stay with him and be like, oh, this is the quality of work I want. Other people would be like, oh no, I found this guy for cheaper. And now they had to redo everything. And a lot of times
Yeah.
they'd come back and they'd hire him and they'd spend double the money because
Yeah.
they didn't do it right the first time.
Yeah. The pain of a cheap service versus a quality service. I totally get that, especially having a service business myself. You know, I love what you said there because I'm noticing as well as a newer father. I think I told you I have a 1 and a 3-year-old boy, and the things that I've seen them pick up are nothing that I've said. It's everything that I've done, right? And so I think what you just hit on, it's so true, is that model behavior. You pick up on those things as you grow. And same thing with my dad. I worked with my dad throughout, my younger years once I got to be 16 and then throughout high school before I went to college. And it was seeing what he did and being able to understand that, okay, that's the behavior that you want to pick up. And another thing that you said, which really stuck with me because I'm a big believer in just get better 1% every day. And
Yeah.
you had said something along that line of, the just 1% more. And ultimately, that's what pulled you into, if I remember correctly, it pulled you into not only strength and conditioning, but exercise physiology, nutrition, the psychology behind it. We talked about the or the body following the mind. And so I want to ask, at what point did you realize it's not just about physical therapy, it's not just about nutrition, but it's really all of those things married together? Was there a certain point where you realized, like, okay, this is the model and this is how I really help people achieve that?
There was a point, and that point came throughout that college journey. And you asked originally, that was the first question, like how did this all come to be? And like I said, in college, I wasn't the best. So at first I was studying exercise physiology because I was like, oh, you can go to school and studying about exercise? Awesome. I'm in, sign me up, right? So I started learning that. I'm like, okay, wait. So that means if I start applying these principles, I can get stronger and faster. Okay, great. So I start doing it. I start getting stronger. I start getting faster. And then I'm like, okay, but what else? Oh, well, you got to fuel the body. So I start studying more about nutrition because, well, that's the fuel that's going to get you to go. And then I started realizing, like, oh, wait, but people get injured. How do I prevent that? Like, I didn't want to wait until I got injured. How do I prevent that? But then if I do get injured, how do I get back as quick as possible? And then as I went down that track, I realized, wait, I see some really amazing athletes all the time. And these are my teammates. And some of them, like, crap the bed, so to speak, when it comes down to it. It's like, oh wait, there's a mindset component. And I'm like, okay, well, I gotta dive into that. And how do you fortify the mind? And as time went on, what started out as how can I get better, I realized I can gather this all up and now start serving other people in that capacity. And so right from the beginning, I I I knew that I didn't want to do things traditionally. I didn't like the idea of compartmentalizing, like this is one thing, this is another thing. It's like, no, but you're a human and you need to perform. And if I can't share the big vision with you, how can I really help you? Because I'm not seeing four-fifths of the things that are possible if all I'm looking at is how you're exercising or how you're stretching. And as I got more experience, I started realizing, hey, this is not working the way I want. Why? And it's that idea of staying curious and being okay with, number one, not knowing, but being okay with experimenting and be like, okay, wait, what else is there? And as time went on, I started learning more about the nervous system. Well, what do you mean the nervous system? I remember one of my mentors, it was like, oh, I want to show you something real quick. He says, here, I want you to do a pull-up. I can do a pull-up. He goes, okay, so you knocked out 5 pull-ups. How'd that feel on a scale of 1 to 10? I was like, okay, good. That was like maybe that felt like a 6 or 7. I said, okay, great. Now we're gonna do the same pull-ups, but all I want you to do is I want you to look down while you're doing it, like with your eyes, physically look down. And I was like, okay. And now I'm knocking them out. I did 5 pull-ups, and I was like, man, how did that feel easier? And he's like, because we're able to tap into the nervous system and use it to amplify your potential. I'm like, okay, wait, now this is something I've never heard. So now we're diving into that a little bit more. And I started showing my wife, and my wife is now like, okay, this makes sense. This is we're talking about something different. But now how do you put it all together? And this is where having the right people makes a difference. I'm Give me the blank canvas. I'm willing to experiment. I'm willing to throw paint. I'm willing to put everything. But my wife is a great editor. And so she's like, all right, this is how we can make this better. This is how we can put this in a system that we can walk somebody through. Because in my mind, things work like I don't know if you've ever seen a mind map, like the bubbles, like a bubble in
Yeah,
the center and then it just
love them.
pops,
Yep.
right? That's how my brain works. But she goes, I get that that's how your brain works, but you can't teach somebody a process with bubbles all over the place. There has to be a step one. There has to
Right.
be a step two. And that way you can walk them through. I'm like, okay, great. And that's one of her superpowers. So we were able to take what I've been doing over the years, consolidate it and make it something, or codify it and make it into a system that is able to work whether you're in person or virtually. And that later became our Suffering to Unstoppable program that has continued to evolve as we evolve.
Right. And I want to get into what you just said, like in person or virtually, because we had talked about, the COVID years, right? It impacted every business in a different way, but for you, it had a unique impact because you actually said that during that time when you were really forced to go fully virtual at that time, and you didn't really have any hands-on work at that time because of the nature of COVID and what was going on. And you said that clients actually took more ownership virtually than they did in person. And so I want to know, like, number one, how did you even identify that? Like, what really made you notice, like, oh, wow, me doing this virtually, there's more engagement, there's more ownership. Like, was there a certain, client that made you realize that, or how did you come to find that out?
Yeah, I remember there was one of my clients, she was in California, and during, as I said, COVID years, what I do is, people are in pain, right? So how do we get people in pain, get out of pain? Because to not only be trapped in your house and be in pain, that's really that'll mess with your mind.
Yeah.
So as I walked her through the program and walked her through the steps that she needed to take based off of our assessment, I started noticing, number one, she was getting better and getting better quick. I was noticing that she was sticking to the program. She was excited to progress through the program. And then I started realizing, oh, like this normally wouldn't make sense, but what's different about when I do this in person versus not. And the biggest difference was the physical contact. And what I came to realize is that whenever there's physical contact and you're in pain, or in other words, you're looking for guidance, you're looking for help from someone. It could be anything. It could be anything, but in this particular case, getting out of pain. The second that I, as the practitioner, lay my hands on you, there's a subconscious, sometimes very conscious, but sometimes or oftentimes a very subconscious thing that happens that is you abdicate responsibility to the practitioner because they must have something magical in their hands. That's why they're putting their hands on me, because they're going to fix me. They are going to fix me. And I never get that chance virtually. I never put my hands on, so that subconscious thread doesn't happen with the same intensity. They're still coming looking for help, but it always stays on their side of the court. They're always the person with the ball, because if they don't do it, nobody is going to do it for them. And what I realized during that time was we were actually getting faster and better results during COVID than pre-COVID. Now, after COVID, when my wife and I addressed, like, oh, wait, this is a thing. So how do we now structure our in-person so that you do get the benefits of the physical contact,
Right.
but you don't relinquish the responsibility? And so we put systems in place. We put context in the conversations so that the person is both aware and engaged enough to take on this challenge as the driver, not the passenger.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. Now, that makes me think though, is there a type of client where, like, is there a difference between the clients who succeed virtually versus in person? Do you think there's a type of client where hands-on still wins? Are there certain characteristics that you've picked up where you're like, okay, this type of person with these character traits seems to really thrive in person versus virtually? Or has it just been, since you've discovered this, like virtually has just completely changed the game to how you guys approach it?
Virtually definitely changed the game, the way we approach it. I still do both. I enjoy having physical contact. Touch is one of my love languages. So being able to be around another person and be able to help them in this way is helpful, but it's also helped me to check myself. I'm not here to fix them. I'm here to guide. And when I find myself, if I find myself going automatically to like, oh, let's put you on the table, I'm like, no, wait, let's talk about this a little bit more. Let's peel back some more layers. Whenever I think I'm done, I'm like, all right, let's shoot for at least 5 more layers before we go there. And sure enough, what gets revealed, what gets released, what gets brought up that has been hiding and lurking behind the shadows for years, all of a sudden now becomes a point of freedom that really does release them. One of the visuals that I like to give, actually, when somebody comes in through the door, sorry, I pointed that way because the door is that way. When they walk through the door, part of the conversation is like, look, we all imagine that you're carrying a backpack, and every little thing, emotional thing that happens to you, you throw in that backpack. Some of them are little, hey, somebody looked at you the wrong way. You got not as much great sleep. You ate some crappy food. Maybe you drank too much. Maybe you drank too much coffee. Maybe you got in an argument with your wife before getting in the car. Or maybe, hey, somebody passed away that was near and dear. Maybe you just got in an accident. Maybe you just got a bill that you can't pay. All of those things, some of them are bigger than others. But what happens? You keep filling that bag, eventually that bag starts weighing you down.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite literally have the conversation. I'm like, I can see them as I'm talking about it and talking about the different things, like their posture just starts sinking and sinking and sinking. I was like, you feel the weight of all that? And they're like, yeah. I go, here, let me take the bag off. We're going to set it right by the door. If you still want it on the way out, you can pick it up. But for now, while you're in here, let's just, let's work without the bag.
Right.
And it usually draws some kind of laughter, some like it breaks tension, but it also lets them know it's okay to take that off. It's okay to, I don't need to be strong and carry that right now. You're in a place that we're here for you. I don't need you to be strong. I need you to be open. And when that happens, all of a sudden, clarity starts bringing in. It's like entering a dark room. If you walk through a dark room, how confident are you going to walk through that room if you can't really see what's in there? Not that you don't know if you're going to bump into something, a wall, or a piece of furniture. You're going to be hesitant. But the second that you turn on light, you can breeze through things. So clarity brings speed. And that's one of my primary roles is how do I shine a light where there's darkness?
Mm. And bring clarity with also what you said earlier, which is the sequencing of it, having those boxes to
Correct.
check or those milestones to hit. Now, you and your wife, Christian, you guys have been running this together since I believe 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. So over 20 years building the suffering to unstoppable system. And there's a lot of things that you guys have built off of that, whether it's, the retreat experiences that you have, the book, the coaching that you do. There's
Right.
so many different avenues that have developed over the last 2 decades, right? But I want to get into, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of new entrepreneurs that listen to the show, just kind of getting their businesses off the ground. And there's always a dynamic, especially when you're running a business with a spouse, right? And so one of the questions I'm curious about is along the way, right? I'm sure there were some hardships, there were some challenges you guys have, both business and personal, right? Like business is personal at the end of the day, especially when you're the founders. So I'm just wondering, what did you guys really learn about not only the business, but your relationship? You had mentioned one of your wife's superpowers being, editing and keeping everything in order. That's the way I would put it. Just curious, along these last, 20 plus years, what are some of the challenges you guys have had to go through and overcome? And then, what was it that really allowed you guys to keep progressing forward? Because it's commendable to have a business for that long. And not only that, have a successful business that's continuing to grow and come out with new programs for people. So if you
Yeah.
can, just talk about the journey a little bit and, the ups and downs. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, and there's a lot of dark rooms that you're walking through and navigating. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious about some of those stories.
Right. I refer to them as superpowers now, but at the beginning, they did not feel like superpowers. They just felt like you're breaking down everything I just built. So part of those years was learning to let the ego go,
Mm.
to get her to, like, to me, it just felt like she was being negative. At the beginning, it was like, oh, you're just being negative about this. Like, why can't we celebrate this new idea? And after much conversation, arguments, difficulty, because at the beginning it was difficult because we operate at polar opposite levels. I'm a big vision, the ultimate optimist. I'm gonna look at everything that could go right, and I'm gonna expect that everything is gonna go the best. She's the exact opposite. She finds, hey, you didn't address this, and this. And if everything goes wrong, this is what's going to happen. And so for the first, I don't know, 10 years, like that was conflict because it felt like, hey, you're bringing this down. You're killing the mood here. I just created this masterpiece. And what I found is that if I'm expecting her to operate like me and she's expecting me to operate like her, then it's not going to work. And so we started understanding, number one, that this wasn't a something adversarial, but it was something that, oh no, this is just the way my mind works. And then we got to a point where we were like, oh wait, there's a need for both. But the timing matters, right? If I come to you with an idea, it's a budding seed. If you come in and give me an axe, everything that's wrong with it, you kill the seed before it's even flourished. Said, I need you to give me some leeway. Feed the fire a little bit before we make it better. And so then she goes, much to her credit, she was like, okay, I get that. So let's build it to here, and then from here we can start making it better. But first, let's feed the momentum. Don't kill the momentum before it started. Okay, great.
Right.
So now we do that. And now she can make it better. And it's like, oh, shoot, you're right. Now she sees all the things that could have gone wrong, probably will go wrong. And it's like, okay, well, how do we plan to either avoid that or deal with it when we get to that point? And
Right.
she's very good at that. And so now it's like, okay, wait, now it's your turn. Let's step on stage, show me what you're working with here. And then,
Right.
that went back and forth. You mentioned the book. Originally I hired an editor, and I think like halfway through writing the book, because she would read it first, and then the editor, or sorry, I would send it to the editor, and then she would get it, and she's like, no, but this is here, this here, this here. And then at some point I was like, at first when she did it, because I mean, if you've ever written a book, it's your baby. So it's personal. It's personal. And it's personal because it was coming from her. Like, I'm like, this is my person. Like, you can't, just crap on this, like you have to love it. And once I got over the initial 3 edits that she did, and because it was hard, like there was immediately like, oh, she's attacking me. And then I realized, like, man, she gets it. Like, she would read it and she's like, all right, what you think you're saying is not what you're actually saying. This is what I think you're trying to say. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. And then I realized it's like, nobody knows me better than her. And she can translate what I actually wrote to what I actually meant, so that the rest of the world could actually understand it. Right. And again, we've been married, 20 years, 20 years. It hasn't been easy, but because we've worked through it, we've come out stronger in that process. Like, we understand each other, we understand our strengths, and now we use it. Like, when something new has to be written, that's one of the most stressful things. I don't give you a silly example, but it's one where I started realizing, okay, wait, like this is the way we got to work. And it's like, the school sent something about a bill, or the school sent something that we need to respond to. For her, the idea of sitting down and writing an email back is like super stressful. I'm like, just write the email. It's not a big deal. I'm like, all right, forget it. I'll write the email. And I'm like, here, I'll send it to you. You tell me what you think. And of course,
now you edit it.
I just write the first thing that comes to mind. And I already know it's not going to look anything like that. I just need to send her something. And then she's like, you can't send that. I'm like, okay, well, how would you change it? She's like, oh, you would do it like this. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's send it. Done. But if I didn't know that about her, which I didn't know at the beginning, we would be fighting for I don't know how long.
Right.
Whereas now I'm like, okay, I'll write it here. What do you think? And she changes half of it. And it's like, okay, great. I don't have to worry about it. I need to put paint. I need to put paint on the canvas. She'll make it better. Like,
right.
Those are the day-to-day things that now knowing your spouse has helped now over the years, working together as well as living together. Like, okay, these are her superpowers. How do we leverage them? And she's done the same with me. She understands that, hey, I'm the eternal optimist and the big visionary, and I'm gonna see things through, rose-colored lenses because that's the way I see the world. I want to see the best in everybody. Somebody comes
Right.
in, I see that person they could be if pain wasn't there. That's one of my gifts. And I can help translate that so that they can see it again. Because a lot of times people, when they've been in pain for so long, it's hard. It's hard to go back because that's all they've known for months, years, decades. And now I'm trying to show them a new possibility that seemed unattainable. And after going through the first session, second session, and all of a sudden I'm doing things I've never done in the last 5 to 10 years, they're like, how's this even possible?
Yeah. Wow. One, that's great advice for everyone listening. But the one thing, a couple things stuck with me, but one of the big ones is what you said about ego, right? I read a book called Ego is the Enemy, and it made me realize a lot of the things that you're talking about right now. And sometimes we have to step back and look at the situation and not make it all about us and how it makes us
Right.
feel. And I think it's commendable that you were able to do that as a man, step back and really look at that and be able to figure out how to navigate, especially in today's world. We have, a lot of men that they're not willing to do that. There are some men out there that are, but a lot of men I come across, right, they do have an ego to the point where they can't see what's actually happening. And another part is, I think you guys exemplify what a great partnership really looks like, because it isn't always easy. There are a lot of things to work through. It takes both parties giving and taking, but you're, like you said, you plant the seed, you cultivate the idea, you get things going, and then it sounds like she's really watering that seed, figuring out, oh, that soil's not right. Oh, we need to change the location. Oh, it's not getting enough sunlight. And
Right.
she's able to bring those things together. And I think people that are on opposite sides of the spectrum of thinking and just philosophy, I think those are some of, on the podcast, those are some of the best ships I've seen. Because when you're constantly just agreeing with each other and you're constantly just going through the motions and always on the same page, I think you lose out on that dynamic where you can actually learn more from being challenged. And it's interesting that, like, suffering to unstoppable, that system, it really, the way I'm looking at it, that applies to everything. It's not just physical, mental, it's relationships, it's how you go about life. Like, are you willing to suffer through certain things so that you can become unstoppable? And that, yeah, there's a lot of really good nuggets there. And I appreciate you getting personal and sharing that. Flipping things now to something else that you said, which I'm big believer that the body follows the mind, and mindset really is like the crux of how everything goes in your life. And you said that a lot of clients come to you, they come to you thinking they're coming for physical pain. And you said the physical pain is actually way down the road. And what has to get fixed first are a bunch of other things. So I'd like you to talk to that first, because a lot of people are, like you said, they come to you, they're like, okay, I just need help getting out of physical pain. But then you're able to uncover a bunch of other things that are actually causing that physical pain, not just the body, the muscle, the tissue, things that are physical. But explain a little bit about that. Like, what are some of those things that you take people through, and some of the realizations that you help people come to when it comes to actually getting out of that physical pain?
It's great. I'm going to throw this term out that most people haven't heard, and people have heard of mindset, but there's another term called brain set. And so first and foremost, this isn't about just thinking positive. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is brain set. So the thinking positive stuff has its place and it's helpful.
It's great for YouTube. It's
Right.
not real life.
Yeah. Look, I think looking at things from a positive lens overall is a net positive. That being said, you can't escape reality. It's like you can't just be like, you've been in pain. You can't just say, oh, I'm not in pain. You're in pain, you're in pain, right? But what I'm talking about and what sets the tone for our entire system is what I call brain set. Now, what is brain set? The brain set is the approach where you align your brain to be in the best place to handle all the other stuff. So let me give you an example. So you have your reptilian brain, which is the most vital brain that you have. It's the one that keeps you alive, keeps you breathing. It's the thing that's the bare minimum. It's your reptilian brain. Then you have your mammalian brain, which is the one that now we're talking about relationships where we as mammals coexist with others and thrive best together, not alone. That's hence why COVID was such a detriment to so many people's health, was because people were isolated from that contact. That's a big one. And then you have what's called the neocortex, or the new brain, which is responsible for a lot of the forward thinking. And so what I'm talking about is when you're talking to somebody and they're understanding, they're thinking with that new brain, with the neocortex. But when somebody's in pain, when somebody is often angry, when they're kind of blown their lid kind of idea, or you've exhausted your ability to reason. I'm sure you've had an argument with somebody, or you're having a conversation and they're just talking something that makes no sense. Like if you're logically putting this together, they're not talking out of that brain. They're coming from a place where they feel cornered. They're coming from a place where they're feeling attacked. So you downregulate from that human neocortex brain and you default to a more primitive brain that is going to keep you alive. So now, instead of arguing something that makes logical sense, you go into something that makes absolutely no sense at all. The same thing happens with the brain when you're in pain. When you're in pain, the body or the brain now is like, hey, we are in danger. The brain's primary role is to keep you alive and to keep you safe. And in the absence of data, in the absence of clarity, it will always default to the worst. So it's going to think the worst. So if it doesn't have an answer for it, it's going to assume it's going to hurt you or kill you. So all of a sudden, something happened, you have pain. Well, now you start building that pattern. The brain still runs that pattern. And unless we reboot that pattern, it's going to keep running it whether there's something still there or not. Hence the chronic pain. So sometimes you got hurt, you got physically hurt, but it's been a year. The physical stuff is healed. Your tissue is healed. Why do you still have pain? Well, because you're still running the same program. And unless we go back to the brain set and hit that reboot and now teach it, oh wait, this is the new program we got to run, the brain will stay stuck there. And so at its core, that's where our program begins. It's how do we tap into that, bring more clarity to the brain, bring more safety so that now we can reprogram it to then start doing the physical stuff. Because if not, you can do all the physical stuff, but it's still running the old program. It goes back to the way it was.
Fixing the whole being. It's not just the muscle or the tissue or
Correct.
what you're feeling. It's so much bigger than that. Well, I didn't realize how in depth you got with the mind part of things. Say that one more time. Brain set.
Yeah.
The brain set. And where can people learn about that? Because that's a really interesting concept. Do you write that in your book? Is that just part of your programs that you do, or where did you come up with that philosophy?
That one of my mentors, Dax Moy, he's out in the UK. He's the one that really helped bring this whole nervous system thing to light for me. And then from there, my wife and I kind of took what he was putting and we looked at the things that we wanted to create and we fused it in a way that now we can build from it in our unique way. He's one of the best I've ever encountered. He's a sage man, you know.
Yeah.
So Dax is always great, and his writings are always, you know, they're gonna make you think. So that's where I got the foundation for all of this. And then between Christian and I, we took that foundation and now we've created our own system that is being held up by
That philosophy.
by that foundation.
Wow. So, okay, so 20 plus years in, what's the next door you guys are trying to open for the business, you know, for your guys personally? Like, what's that next door that we're going through?
I've been asked this before, and I think so. I'm 46. I've got 3 kids. They're high school, middle school, the 3 kids. And my focus is them. I want to spend the time with them. And what my next iteration is, how do I simplify more? How do I remove? Not keep adding, how do I subtract so that life gets less complicated? And that
Addition by
happens,
subtraction. Yep.
and you know, that happens with something as simple, you know, you've heard it, you know, I have a uniform. I don't have to think about what I wear every day. Same thing, like in the house, how do we declutter? Like we're constantly going, my wife is phenomenal at that. She constantly goes into the kids' rooms, is like the way these kids are growing. My youngest, who's 12, grew 7 inches last year. So all his stuff fits him, like all his pants fit like capris. He grew 3 shoe sizes over the
Oh
school
my
year
gosh.
this year. And it's important to remove clutter. I think physical clutter, mental clutter, spiritual clutter, all of that will hinder speed, because what does it do? It blocks clarity. And we talked about before, clarity brings speed. And so if you have stuff in the way, you're just like an obstacle is getting in the way. Like if you put like one of those sunshades and you're trying to drive with that, you're not going to be going that fast because you're not going to feel that safe, right?
Yeah.
You remove that sunshade from the windshield, all of a sudden you can see everything in front of you. It's much more you're much more able to go faster and you can see where you're going. That's my big thing, is continuing to eliminate and optimize for simplicity.
Right. So you can continue to live on purpose for a purpose and carry on a legacy. You know, you just mentioned you have 3 kids that are all at different stages, really wild stages at that point in their life, right? They're becoming young adults. You're watching that. You're trying to help as much as you can through that. How has watching your kids grow up changed the way you look at your purpose and your legacy, right? Because, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, things were probably very different how you were looking at, you know, your legacy. But how has raising your kids changed that perspective for you?
One thing is raising the kids. The other one, so again, I feel very fortunate. Both of my parents are still together. They're married. I had a great relationship with my parents, but because of the many hours that I trained with my father, I really, from an early age, I knew I wanted to become a father. Like I wanted to do what my father did with me. Like I wanted to spend the time and the hours, you know, spending those quality times training and just connecting with my kids in that capacity. And so I already knew that I wanted to find the right woman in my life, to get married, to have kids. I wanted 6 kids. She after our third one, who was the handful, she was like, "All right,
She
I'm
met you
done."
halfway.
She met me halfway, and I was like, "All right, good." And we have 3 amazing kids. They're all healthy. They're all really, really. It's funny because the older one, my son, is just like my wife, very much process driven, very. My daughter is the more creative. Like them two are opposite ends of the brain. One is the right side, one is the left. And then my youngest one, he straddles between the two. He can dance between the two. So maybe that's why he was the most fiery of the two. I don't know. He's the one that's definitely caused some gray hairs. But you were asking about how did that change as far as legacy? It puts into perspective the things that become that are important.
Mhm.
And I've had the great fortune of being with quite a few people, clients of mine who have come in with issues, with pain, left better, and then later in life have passed away. And I've been able to be there close enough to that time where I got to witness what really mattered at the end of the day. Because most of my clients are by the world standard will be successful, financially successful, impact successful. Many of them have figured that part out. And so what was fascinating is that all of them spoke about experiences. They spoke about the family. They spoke about memories with their kids that were simple. It's kind of like your kids are still very young, but one thing that's funny, and most parents will see this at some point. It's like you're like, oh, I'm gonna get my son or my daughter this toy that is an awesome toy. That there's a toy that they wanted, and all of a sudden they get the toy and they're playing with the box and they don't even play with the toy. And it's like so much of life is simple, but we complicate it. Yeah. And I think in the end, that simplicity, those moments are the things that matter the most. And I'm starting to get the kids to realize that, to appreciate those moments. I'm like, guys, like, I know this seems like a silly thing, but I trust me that you're going to remember this when you're an adult. This little thing that just happened, or this experience, like I like taking them camping, and this bad experience are the ones you're going to be talking about. This one where the rain storm literally knocked down our entire tent, broke the poles, and we were drenched in rain, which was uncomfortable. And we didn't have that much fun when that happened. But think about the stories that you ask. Sorry, the stories that you tell. I said, how many of those stories, or no, actually, I ask them because they always ask me about my adventures and, hey, Dad, tell us another story about when, these adventures. And so sometimes when they get locked in that they want to be on a screen or something, I'm like, hey, guys, those stories that you asked me about? Yeah. I said, how many of those stories start with, I was sitting down and playing on a video game? None of them. I go, where do all those stories start? Outside. Okay. Where do we need to be?
Go outside and live.
Let's go outside.
Yep. No, that's fantastic, man. Hey, we have a tradition on the show where we end the show with one specific question, but before we get into that, I just would like to give you an opportunity to let everybody know what's the best way to connect with you. Where can they find your book, your programs, where the clinic is? We'll make sure for the audience that we post everything in the description of the episode, the link to your LinkedIn profile, your website, where you have the book at, all that good stuff. But coming from you yourself, where's the best place for people to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, the best place, like the hub for everything, is Cruz, CRUZ, country.com. And there you'll find all of our programs. You'll even find a link to the book. The book has its own website, legacycodebook.com. It has nothing to do with pain, but more about being intentional about creating your legacy. So if legacy is an avenue that you're looking for, I highly recommend the book. If you've been in pain for quite some time, and it doesn't matter where you are, at the very least, you lose nothing by having a conversation. Go to cruisecountry.com. You'll be able to find everything there. And then on Instagram is usually, and LinkedIn are the two places that I hang out the most, where you can find me there. I think Instagram is ACRUZ and then number 3. That's my profile. And then LinkedIn is, I think, Armando_Cruz, but you can find it there, I'm sure, somewhere there.
Awesome. No, thanks for sharing with everybody. We'll get that put into the description of the episode so people can just click the links and connect with you guys. So, tradition on this podcast, we end the podcast with the magic wand question. And I ask everyone that comes on here, if you had a magic wand and you could fix one thing in your business right now, what would that thing be?
What would that be? I'd say just have people come in, like, I don't know. I think just give me more opportunities to serve more people. If that's what it is, whether it's virtually or in person, the more people I can help, that the happier. Like that's I'm put on this earth to serve people, to serve them, to get them out of pain physically, spiritually, emotionally, in whatever way I can. And the more people I can that I get to interact with, the better, right? Whether it's speaking on stage to 1,000 people, or somebody, watching one of my videos, or people actually walking in. Any one of those, I think, would be amazing.
Fantastic. Well, everybody, thank you again for listening to the Grid Shift podcast. Our guest today was Armando Cruz. We'll get all of his links and bio in the description of the episode. Make sure you connect, like, and follow him on all of his socials. Check out his website. Grab a copy of the book. Armando, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was absolutely my pleasure. Really enjoyed this podcast. Like getting deep into some of the things we talked about. So thank you very much. And again, this is Alex with the Grid Shift podcast. Our guest was Armando Cruz, and we'll see y'all next time on the next episode. Thank you.
Take care.